Okay, good morning, everybody. Everybody's well. Happy Thursday. Hope you're doing well. We talked about yesterday getting in the game, getting out of the game. I thought I was just understanding why I think a show like this, why we do this. Why do I do this for? Why do we do this for? If you're here, you're doing this with me, is because just having time to come out of your life creates a habit to come out of your life, right? Just creating a muscle. Do you ever do that? You ever work out and there's a muscle that you didn't even know existed before? You ever have that? Where you're like, what is that? And you start realizing that I had a muscle there? Like I've never, oh my gosh, I didn't know. It was a muscle. It's called the in and out muscle that I've just created. But it's a real muscle. And it's being able to come in and out of your life. It's like the lenses. You click the lenses in and out, in and out, in and out. Right? The ability to come in and out of your life. And by creating a muscle that allows you to do that, you're able to always be able to gain perspective. So that you're able to make better decisions in life and able to gain greater insight as to what to do. And so you don't lose your time. Right? This is the beginning of what we spoke about just 2 days ago, about this idea of big goals and vision that excites you and inspires you. Remember the fire in the forest. The ability to pull out and think about things globally sometimes changes how you act individually. The macro impacts the micro. And so many times as you're pulling out a little bit, just as you're having that perspective, you're able to just go in and out of life. You're able to be in a moment, and in that moment feel certain things and think certain things. And then at a given time, usually, you can pull out and gain perspective. For those that journal know what I'm talking about. That's what journaling does. Journaling enables you to take a time during your day and look at your day, go above and go on your life, so that you can train yourself to get perspective. Even if everything that you're putting in the journal, there's nothing in your journal that's like, brilliance. It just doesn't matter. You're giving yourself you're forming a habit to gain perspective. That's where prayer is so powerful, believe it or not, because you're pausing your day to connect to something deeper. What ends up happening is you end up reflecting during that time as well. Holidays, weekends, Shabbat, all these things that you have in your life that are breaks to your day are incredibly powerful if they're used properly, because they create this habit of in the life, on the life, in the life, on the life. So that when you're in a moment, you can own the moment. And why is it so critical for? So I just want to add another concept, and then maybe next week we'll be able to sort of circle them back. But I want to add one more concept today. It's called the dilution of hours. I think we've spoken about it here before. Dilution of hours. What is that? What's one of the greatest? It's actually one of the greatest and most underrated killers of corporate achievement. Is called dilution of hours. And here's how it works. You only have a certain amount of hours you get out of your employees. You pay per hour. At the end of the day, even if you don't pay them a certain, even if they have an annual salary, you can break it down by hours. Right? You have only a certain amount of employees, and they only have a certain amount of hours that they're going to give to your company, right? And so when the company has clear goals and clear feedback loops, then everybody comes in and uses their hours properly. When it doesn't, you can theoretically be causing fires that'll bring people to do things that'll end up not really helping the company, right? So when you have bad management, people are just left to their own devices, or people go in directions that aren't really helpful to them. They're not sitting at, I'm not talking about wasting time. Forget that. That's the easy stuff. I'm talking about working. I remember once when I was in law. I'll never forget. I had this guy who was in the way it works in law, just to give you the 2 seconds, is like you come in as an associate, and then it's 7-8 years of that. And then if you make it to partner. You can also make it to counsel. You go up, but the associate range. But in the associate class, especially in the firm that I started with, it's so structured that every year that you're in more control than the year beneath you. Your third year, your fourth year, your fifth year. remember one of the groups that I had this like disaster of he was like a sixth year or seventh year, like he was a total disaster. God bless him, but he was a total disaster. Like, I mean, it was rough, full, like a, self-absorbed, knows everything. If you're underneath him, you don't exist. If you're above him, he kisses up, like one of those types. So I remember we had a case we were working on, and he just decided that he wanted transcripts of, all of the of all the conversations that took place over the past 5 years, whatever. Like, I watched him call up like the entire paralegals of like litigation, and like 20 people showed up in a room, and he's like, okay, everybody, here's what we're gonna do. I want you to take all the transcripts. I want you to highlight, and they're looking at him like, what? Like, what? And he's like, is there a problem? Like, in big law also, like, there's no concept of like sleep, like whatever. It's always, and I watched these guys like honestly work for like a week, highlighting, photocopying, till he had 5 years of transcripts, and then he like reviewed it over the weekend, picked out like 2 things, and like never even really used it. Right? You have 1,000 hours being put into a task that wasn't even important. That's called dilution of hours. They worked. They weren't playing around, but the work that they did was not really productive to the cause, because there was no real thought as to whether or not the thing that I'm doing is productive to the cause. Right? A lot of us have lives like this, where we make decisions to do things, we get involved in things come our way, and we waste our time and energy. We're working, we're doing stuff, we're investing energy, but we're just on some personal dispute that has no value. It's not going to matter. We're engaged in some activity that like doesn't really matter at the end of it. It's not going to affect our lives in the long term at all. But we're in it. We're doing it. We're invested in it. Right? We have like multiple hobbies. We don't really need multiple hobbies that now take us across the world or across our thinking. Like, we don't really need the stuff we're working, and a lot of the work that we're doing, we're just going around in circles because we're not clear with where we're going. So when you don't have perspective, you get bounced around, and you get sucked into things, and you find yourself putting in real energy. And what do you get for it? Nothing. Very little. Disputes that mean nothing really in long terms. Really. Fighting and miscommunications and spending for no reason, to only have to make more money, to like all that stuff. It's just a path of dilution of hours. You've taken the hour, because you only have a certain amount of hours on this earth. It's all you get. We don't know how many, but like, we only get a certain amount of hours on this earth, and we're diluting it. All right, we'll talk about this. Have a great weekend, everybody. Spend some time getting out of life, to look at life. Where am I going? What do I want to accomplish? What are the greatest things that I can accomplish in my life? Am I spending my time doing that? Let's get macro. All right, Shabbat Shalom. Have a great weekend. Look forward to seeing you next week.
Living on a lifeline, the world doesn't ever seem to change. Looking for the sunshine, but you're caught up in the rain. It's like your eyes are wide open, but you cannot see. You're watching life pass you by like 1, 2, 3. Walking in destruction, the winds of life blur your vision. All the devastation, forever feels like you're on the run. It's time, no one else can set you free. You're locked inside.